Hi, thrifty travelers. So, we're going to do something a little different today. A few months ago, we recorded with Kasey DellaPenna, a digital nomad, travel influencer, Disney expert, and our friend and coworker here at Thrifty Traveler. But in the time since, she went on this unbelievable trip through China and Hong Kong that we desperately wanted to talk about, especially since she has now visited every single Disney park in the world. So, in the middle of this episode, we're going to break in to talk about that trip for a few minutes, which is why we're wearing different clothes and why we look like we've aged a few months or years in Kyle's case.
Hey.
And get Kasey's official Disney park rankings too. I know you're going to love it. All right, let's do this. Yo, welcome to the show. I'm Gunnar Olson here with Thrifty Traveler executive editor Kyle Potter. But the person you're here to hear from is one of the newest members of our team, someone who's living the travel nomad lifestyle and making it look easy. You know her as Kasey Meets World on Instagram and TikTok, but we know her as Thrifty Traveler influencer and affiliate marketing manager, Kasey DellaPenna. Kasey, welcome to the show. How you doing?
I'm good. Thank you so much for having me today.
Yeah, we're really excited to have you. This has been a long time coming. We've known we needed to get you on the show since you started here. But first, I need to find something out, and this is a little bit selfish. So when I think about traveling, especially to Disney, it kind of scares me a little bit. Okay, so my question is, why am I so scared of Disney, and what do you do to make it seem cool and fun?
And before you get into that, can you just tell us, would you consider yourself a Disney adult?
Yes, absolutely.
Unashamedly a Disney
I am
adult.
unashamed to admit I am a Disney adult.
Right.
But I like to think I'm a cool Disney adult, if those exist.
Is there anyone who would say that they're a lame Disney adult? Like, who would
No.
admit to that? Okay. All right. Just
Yes.
we've established that. Good.
So just we're going to talk more about like the ins and outs of traveling to Disney. But what are some of the things, like, why do you love it? What makes it worth it to you to kind of endure the lines and whatever other pain points there could be getting into Disney?
I grew up going to Disney with my family, so for me, I think one part is nostalgia, but the other part of it is escapism. I just really love fantasy and all of that. I also am a theme park junkie, so it's like not just Disney in general, but all theme parks.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
All right, we're going to dig into that a little later as well. But today on the show, we're talking to Kasey about her favorite travel deals, a tragic mistake she made at the Orlando airport that I'm excited to hear more about, how she became a digital nomad, and what life is like in her adopted home of Guatemala. All that and more. Welcome back to the Thrifty Traveler Podcast. All right, let's jump into something hot and something cold. It's a little bit of good and a little bit of bad from the past week in travel. But I guess in this case, it's going to be a career in travel from Kasey. So we're going to start with something hot as always. So, Kasey, what stands out to you as some of the best travel deals that you've ever booked?
So I didn't get into points and miles until very recently. So a lot of my travel's just been kind of like what I've been finding. And so when I was backpacking, I think the best deal that I ever had was um, I had to fly from Japan to Seattle, and I was looking at flights, and they were like $800 one way directly to Seattle. And I was like, okay, well, maybe I can do this. I've never been to Hawaii. Let me just search what it would be from Japan to Hawaii, and then from Hawaii to Seattle. And both of those flights were coming up, like, under $150 plus luggage, and then I was like, "And then I can spend 2 nights in Hawaii too for the same price as flying directly to Seattle." And for me, at that time when I was a backpacker, I was like, "That's a great deal, and I get to see an extra state I've never been to." So, I ended up flying, to Hawaii for 2 nights and spent around the same amount of money as I would have just flying directly to Seattle, so,
Yeah,
yeah.
That is objectively a good deal, not just for a backpacker, just
Yeah.
in general. That's a great
Yeah.
deal. And like, we talk a lot on the show and on our site about points and miles. And I know you have some more kind of recent success stories about that. But at the same time, like, we're still looking for flight deals like this. We're still talking about and all personally booking the cheapest flights that we can. And I think if nothing else, that's a really good reminder that sometimes you just need to like check all the boxes and check
Mhm.
all of the different variations of getting from point A to point B, even if it's pretty non-traditional. Because does it make sense that you can book a flight to Hawaii and then to the continental United States for significantly less than just booking a nonstop? It doesn't make sense at all. Why
Yeah.
would airlines do that? If airlines set their prices based upon the actual cost of getting you from point A to point B, that's not how it would work. But
Yeah.
there are so many possibilities exactly like that.
Yeah.
I think as a backpacker and now digital nomad, because I have a lot of flexibility in my travels, I really just focus on whatever continent I wanna get to first, and then I find the cheapest way to get there, and then from there, like, a lot of the times, if I say, "Oh, I wanna go to Europe," I find the cheapest way into Europe, and then from there, it's like $50 flights to whatever city I actually wanna go to. So it ends up saving me so much money.
Yeah, before this, what we're calling hot flight summer, this kind of
Let it go, Gunner. Just let it go,
this
dude.
crazy run of deals that we've seen lately, we would tell people, especially when airfare to Europe, especially, was so high for so long, and people would just plug in their home airport, they'd plug in the exact destination they want to go to, and then the results back on Google Flights would show them something around $1,200, and they were saying, "Well, my Europe trip is fried," and I'd say, just use that Google Flights Explore map and look and see where you can get in Europe. Because once you're there, it's so easy to get around. It's so cheap to get around. And that was just like the number one travel hack, especially for continental Europe, which is so small comparatively. And it's just, it's an easy way to get places. And you get to see another place for, less of a price as well, which is
Right.
just so fun as well.
Well,
Well,
that's
we talk a lot about positioning flights and how important it is if you want to get to Asia to, book a separate flight from your home airport to Seattle or LA or San Francisco and then book that trans-Pacific flight separately. But it's almost more important to think about, maybe we're going to coin a new term here, destination flights, about just getting to the general region of where you want to go and then booking a separate flight or going by train or by car or whatever to get to your final destination. I think we can do a lot better than destination flights. I'm kind of rethinking that one. If you have any ideas out there, podcast@thriftytraveler.com. But Casey, I mean, that's such a great point. I've just focusing on getting to the continent or the
Mhm.
region and then getting from there is even more important, I would say, than booking a positioning flight to get from within the continental United States
To
to a
get out.
departure point in
Mhm.
order to get out for a cheaper fare. If you can do both of those things, that's where you unlock some huge savings.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what I did with my recent Iberia flight. So I knew I had to get to Europe. I knew I had to get to France eventually, but I didn't really have plans before that. And I knew I had points from my Chase Sapphire Preferred card, my sign-up bonus. So I was looking at flights from Guatemala to anywhere in Europe. I found an Iberia flight. I looked for the points. It was 42,500 points in business class and $150. And I flew to Madrid.
And you get to see Madrid while you're
Yeah,
there. It's so
exactly.
cool.
And you get to fly business class and you get to use your points before Iberia did what it did earlier this year, which is raise those award rates. So now that exact same flight probably costs more than 50, if not 60,000 points each way. So
Yeah.
you did a great job.
Thank you.
All right, this is getting too positive, too rosy. Let's drag this back down. We're going into something cold, and I need to hear this story about a mishap that you had at the Orlando International Airport. Tell us about it.
And just, it was not flying into Orlando. That was not the mishap because I
No.
think that would be many people's assumptions.
No, Orlando Airport is, like, the bane of my existence. I hate it so much. It's awful. I always tell people, like, go 3 or 4 hours early if you're gonna fly out of Orlando because the security lines are just insane. But that was my home airport for several years when I was living in Orlando. And I wish that I could explain this story better other than I have, to this day, 0 idea how this happened. I was flying from Orlando back to Pittsburgh, and I got to the airport 2.5 hours early. I went through security, I went and got food, I got to the gate, I put my headphones in, I'm just sitting there, nothing's happening, and then I see eventually that it says boarding, but I don't see anyone boarding the flight, so I'm like, "Okay, maybe it just says it's Spirit," right? So I'm like, "Maybe it just says it's boarding, but, like, no one's actually boarding." I don't know, so I'm like, "Okay, like, I'll just go to the restroom real quick, and then I'm sure they'll actually start calling people to board." And so I go to the restroom, gone 2, 3 minutes max. The restroom is, like, right next to the gate. I come back, I sit back down, and it says, "Closed." And I was like, "What?" Like, when did all of these people, like, get on this flight? Like, I literally to this day have 0 idea how this happened. And I went up to the gate, and they're like, "We've been calling your name." And I'm like, "No, you haven't. I've been sitting right here staring at this gate. Like, I genuinely do not know." And they're like, "Well, being Spirit, we don't have any more flights to Pittsburgh today." And I'm like, "Ooh, okay, so now what do I do?" And they were like, "Well, we have one to Cleveland in, like, 5 hours." So I called my dad and I said, "Hey, dad, looks like you're gonna be doing a 2.5 hour drive to Cleveland to come get me today." And he wasn't too happy about it, but, I wish I could have an answer to this, but I genuinely don't know how I missed it. Like, Where did all the people getting on the plane go? I don't know.
Just missed it right at the gate. That's outstanding.
What if it was supposed to be just you on that plane?
Yeah.
That is a
A
possibility
Spirit
here.
private
Yeah,
plane, yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty
It's
good.
first time for everything, or a second time.
I almost missed a flight sitting at the gate once. It was I was in Jackson, Wyoming, after I played a hockey game, and we lost the hockey game, and then we went out and celebrated the loss in the
As
town
one
of
does.
Jackson. And I flew out on a Delta flight to Atlanta the next morning. It was like a 7 a.m. flight, so it was one of those not much sleep, just get to the airport. And I fell asleep at the gate, but the plane was so small; it was just a little regional jet going to Atlanta. One of the gate agents came over and tapped me on the shoulder. Are you Gunner? It's like, yes. And she goes, please get on the plane, sir. So
an angel who saved you.
Yeah, I had an angel, but unfortunately, you had no angels with Spirit on your Orlando experience.
No,
so.
absolutely not.
Surprise.
Honestly, I'm just happy that they rebooked me. Like, I thought they were going to tell me to buy a new flight.
Yeah, they very well could have. So.
Yeah.
That is pretty bad, not to rub salt in the wound. It also could have been a lot worse.
Yeah. I mean, it was just from like where I was living back to my parents' house. If it had been like on one of my big international trips, I probably would have been freaking out a lot more. But I was like, oh, if I don't get on a flight today, I can just go home and sleep.
Right.
But I don't know. I don't know how it happened. Yeah. My mom likes to make fun of me for that story a lot. She's like, "You've traveled all over the world and you miss your flight from Orlando to Pittsburgh."
Well,
No, Mom.
let's talk a lot more about those travels all over the world. We're going to get into all that. You being a travel nomad, we're going to talk a lot of Guatemala as well. But first, we're going to take a quick break. You know how annoying it is to book a hotel and then find out the price dropped a week later? It's probably the worst feeling in travel, knowing that the best deal slipped through your fingers. And that's why I'm obsessed with HotelSlash. Not only do they get you 20 to 40% off hotel stays right out of the gate, but every booking is automatically tracked. So if the price drops, they let you know so you can rebook and save even more. It's like having price protection for your hotel stays.
Exactly. So, for example, I was looking at the DoubleTree by Hilton in Boston, and on other sites, it came out to about $324 after taxes and fees. But with HotelSlash, it was just $302 all in. Same hotel, same dates, lower price. It's easy. Go to HotelSlash.com, use code ThriftyTraveler, and you'll unlock a free 90-day trial membership. Plus, that same code gets you up to $20 off your first prepaid booking. HotelSlash, where thrifty travelers slash their hotel stays.
All right, welcome back. Let's get into the extra mile where we dig a lot deeper on some travel topics. And this week's travel topic is Kasey, of course. And I just want to start from the very beginning. When did you know that you loved travel? How did you get into travel?
Well, my travel career started pretty basic, I would say. In college, I studied abroad, and that was when I realized I really like it. At 19, I went to France by myself for 6 weeks. I didn't know anyone on my program. I knew there would be other people. I just didn't know them. But I knew I wanted to study abroad. That was more important to me than my college education, actually. And then I just had all of these people telling me, "Wow, this is amazing. This is going to be a once in a lifetime opportunity for you." And when I got there, I realized, why does this have to be a once in a lifetime opportunity? Why can't I travel more? And then I went home, finished my degree, and then in 2018, I had a negative experience with one of my jobs, and I said, I think this is what I'm going to try backpacking and just see what happens. So I saved up as much money as I could. I gave myself like a 9-month deadline, saved up a good chunk of change, quit my job, gave up my apartment, and went backpacking.
That's awesome. Where was the first stop on the backpacking journey?
Again, pretty typical. I went to Europe. Yeah. Yeah.
That's awesome. So did you have obviously putting together backpacking itineraries is pretty difficult, and you have to, have a lot of tools and tricks to make sure you do that. Did you have like an aha moment of when you knew that you were getting really good at budget travel? Like, was there a particular, booking that you made, or something that you did where you knew that you could kind of make this sustainably happen for you for a long time?
Yeah, actually, so a friend of mine had mentioned that she was doing World Packers, which is a work exchange, and she said she went to a vineyard in Italy and picked grapes for a couple of weeks and got free housing and food, and so that's why I picked Europe because of I reached out to the same exact people, and they said, "Yeah, we'll host you for 6 weeks," and so I lived in a little town called Montefiascone in Italy for 6 weeks, and I picked grapes during the day, and then Friday, Saturdays, and Sundays, I would just take a train to whatever city in Italy that I wanted to go to, and I saved so much money doing that. Like, I got to live in Italy for 6 weeks.
And you get to live in Italy for 6 weeks and not just see Rome or Milan or
Yes.
Naples or Venice or, one of the major sites and cities in Italy. What, if you had to give travelers who love Italy but feel like they've only scratched the surface of the biggest cities, where would you tell people to go?
Honestly, like, where I was at was absolutely beautiful. It's an hour and a half train ride north of, Rome. It's Montefiascone is really, really tiny town, but it's on a big lake, Lake Bolsena, and it's gorgeous there. So it's not too far to access from Rome, or you could do just maybe, like, a day trip or something, but it's absolutely beautiful there. Yeah.
I mean, part of, I would imagine, starting your career in travel as a backpacker gives you so much more insight into how to do things cheaper by thinking smaller.
Mhm.
Um, how have you kind of applied that mindset to the rest of your travels over the last 10 plus years?
I honestly set my life up to just kind of be existing as a normal person, but just in a different country. So I grocery shop and I cook at home, not a whole lot, but, like, I just tried to set it up as, like, this is just my daily life. It just happens to be in a different country. And then you're not always going to a $100 a day activity or excursion or whatever it is. Sometimes just existing and learning about the culture is more than enough. So when I was living in Italy for 6 weeks, they had, a family with 3 kids, so I got to learn a ton about just Italian culture, their schooling, how everything worked, and that was a lot more of a, like, personal experience than just going to Rome, seeing the sights, and then leaving.
Yeah, I think you mentioned it a little bit ago, but not treating your travel like once in a lifetime, I think lends itself to a lot more of those truly once in a lifetime or more authentic experiences, right? And Max mentioned it in your interview with him, Kyle. The same thing. Max Miles Points. He said that once I stopped treating my travels like they were once in a lifetime, and I just started enjoying them for what they were, it changed his whole mindset and then the way you book and travel the world. So that was really cool to hear from you as well. But it's a great thing for people to remember is some of the trips that I've had that felt like the Amazing Race, where I was trying to fit in 400 things a day because I think I'll never go back, are sometimes a little too stressful, and then it kind of becomes all a blur. Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and I mean, whether it's backpacking and doing things as cheaply as possible in order to do more, or using points and miles and earning them and redeeming them, you can do both. You can do one or the other. But the reason why we talk about these things is because ultimately it is so freeing. It's not just, it is really cool to be able to book a business class flight or a first class flight or a really fancy hotel using points that cost thousands of dollars, money that none of us would ever spend. But ultimately, it's about experiences and having more of those experiences. And so, having that foundation of knowing how to do these things for cheap ultimately frees you up to do more of it, whatever more means to you.
Yeah. So obviously, all those experiences kind of lend themselves nicely to you showcasing them a little bit and showing other people how you did it. So tell us how you became Casey Meets World and not just Casey.
Yeah, so, I posted on Instagram during that backpacking trip to Europe, but that was just, like, I would share what I got into and what I was doing, but I didn't really think, like, it was gonna be, me becoming an influencer, and then 2020 happened. I think we all know what happened there. Uh
Could you remind us? It's a little hazy.
So this global pandemic
Yeah.
happened, and I was living in Orlando
Oh,
trying to
that.
save up some
Yeah.
money. And TikTok became big, and like everybody else, I was scrolling on TikTok, and I was like, "Well, why should I not start posting on TikTok?" And living in Orlando, again, Disney, right? Um, they were shut down for 3 months, and when they reopened, no one really was flying into Orlando, so the parks were dead, which was honestly the best time. Like, it's never gonna be like that again. There was nobody. So I just started posting a lot of TikToks about me going to Disney and experiencing it, dead, and people wanted to see what it was like and if it was safe to travel there and what the, different things that Disney did to help accommodate for people traveling during COVID, and then I hit, like, my first 10, 15,000 followers, and I was like, "Whoa, okay, people actually care about what I have to say. This is kind of cool." And then I started traveling again in 2021, packed up my stuff again, gave up my apartment, started traveling, and I was like, "Okay, I'm gonna post every day for a year," and I did that, and here we are almost $100,000 later.
Man, that's so awesome. So, how did you find your way to us then?
So, actually, one of my friends, recommended me. She's an affiliate with Thrifty, and she sent me the post, and she was like, "Oh, I think you'd be amazing at this." And so I applied. So it was kind of just a connection of a connection. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome. She was
And
absolutely right.
yeah, she was. And so to be clear, you're really on the different side of content creation in the influencer world, not, capturing video and publishing content on our social media platforms, but working with other influencers and content creators to talk about Thrifty Traveler. So with the caveat that you're still relatively new here, what have you learned kind of being on the other side of the social media world from kind of what you had been doing for years of just kind of posting your own content and talking about your own travels?
Yeah, I really wanted a job like this because I wanted to help bridge the gap between influencers and brands because I receive so many emails being like, "Hey, will you make a video for 3 cans of tuna?" And I'm like, "Why would I do that?"
I mean, it depends on how much you like tuna, I think.
The answer is not a lot. Uh, so, like, I I really came into this job with, like, I have this fresh perspective of being able to tell Thrifty, "Hey, like, this is what it's like on the other side." Um, but it's been really cool to have all these ideas and have Jared just, like, let me run with them and build out these programs that I think, are gonna be really cool to bring brand awareness, to Thrifty. And it's not easy. It's a push-pull. Like, the creator, business is just very new, so working with all different types of creators gives me an insight to what people are charging, and some people are a lot more difficult to work with than others, and, I'm not gonna name any names,
Name, name.
Okay, the top 5 most difficult influencers to work with. All right, no,
Number 1.
How, coming from this first as a creator yourself and now working with creators from the brand perspective, looking at that in totality, how do you feel like this kind of creator influencer economy, whatever, how do you think it's changed within the last, like, let's just say 5 years since the start of COVID?
Oh,
For better or
gosh,
worse, or
I don't think we have
both?
that kind of
Oh,
time.
this is our podcast, Casey. We can go as long as
Welcome
we
to
want
the
to.
3-hour podcast with Casey Meets World. Oh, I mean, it's changed significantly, like, even so TikTok, when I first started, I think the reason that we were able to grow the people who were posting were able to grow so rapidly was because there was, a demand for creators, and now everybody's creating, and so there's a lot more competition, and the algorithms have been changing a lot, and so it's just this constant game of trying to keep up with what Instagram and TikTok and YouTube are wanting, like, you to post, and staying true to your brand and who you are and what you think your followers wanna see, so it's changed a lot, yeah, in the last 5 years.
Do you think brands are paying much closer attention and therefore spending more money on creators, or is it still relatively new and kind of in its initial stages?
I would say brands are pretty hesitant about spending large chunks of money on creators. I would say a lot it's usually like I set a price and I usually end up getting less than that, from most brands. So I think that brands have still kind of yet to see the value in what, creators can do. But I've had companies from, like, viral videos that I've made reached out and be like, "You've changed my business for a short period of time." Like, I had, you know, 300 people sign up in the last, like, couple of days because of your video. So it really is a balance though, 'cause, like, sometimes you can post a video and it gets 1,000,000 views and it's super successful, and then sometimes you post a video and it gets 300 views and, like, you did the exact same thing, you just don't know why. So, like, it's frustrating as a creator sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, let's I want to talk about Guatemala.
Yes, my
So
favorite.
okay, how did you end up there? And kind of tell everybody what your, life is like there, how long every year you spend there, what is Casey's life in Guatemala like?
Right. So 3 years ago, I got a brand deal to work with World Packers, and they said they'll send me somewhere for $250. So I Googled flights to places from I was in Florida, and Guatemala popped up, and I was like, "All right, Guatemala it is." So booked a flight to Guatemala, spent a week in Quetzaltenango, which is north of Lake Atitlan, which is where I live now. Teaching English for about 2 weeks to a woman and was living in her house. So again, got to stay in Guatemala for 2 weeks for practically free. All I had to do was talk in English every day to this lady. And then I was like, I really need to go to this lake. This lake I've been seeing on my For You page. I really need to go there. I got to the lake. I dropped my stuff off at my Airbnb. I walked down to the dock and I was just like, I love it. Like this, I just love it here. And then I was romantically involved with someone for a couple of years from Guatemala. So that's why I did end up deciding to move there. But I just decided to stay because I love it. I think it's one of the greatest places I've ever been to, and it's magical.
Yeah. So you live there now part of the year, and then you come back up to the States in the summertime.
To hang out with
All
us
right.
in this room,
Yeah.
Yeah,
primarily. Yeah.
basically,
Yeah.
yes, yeah.
So that's obviously a pretty dreamy lifestyle, especially for people like us who go through the northern winters. But what do you love most about your time down there? I guess what makes Guatemala worth it for you every year?
So I think I'm a snowbird for like that's what instead of going to Florida, I go to Guatemala for the winters, right? And
Slightly different than most snowbirds, a little bit more off the beaten path.
yeah,
Going to like
absolutely.
Fort Myers or Guatemala, it's a toss up.
That's actually really funny because my grandparents have been snowbirds for the last 50 years in Fort Myers.
They are not alone.
um,
No offense to Fort Myers or its wonderful tourism board. Just to be clear.
no, it's just ironic because you didn't know that beforehand, right?
No, I did not.
Most people have seen photos and videos from Guatemala. They know it's very beautiful. But what other parts of Guatemala do you love? Like, why do you like to live there?
I love it because where I live specifically is a small town. So there's a community there that I love. Everyone knows everyone. It feels very supportive. I live on Lake Atitlan, which is arguably one of the most beautiful places in the entire world. And there's also a lot of indigenous population there. So the culture is just extremely rich. So I love it. I don't know. I can't imagine living anywhere else right now.
Yeah, it's obviously it's pretty remote, I guess, compared to the only international airport in Guatemala. Does that make things a little trickier, or do you like kind of that distance and being a little bit away from the major city?
It definitely makes things trickier to travel, but I think of it as my home base. So when I'm in Guatemala, I'm in Panajachel, which is the town I live in. So that's where I'm at, and I don't move around a whole lot. If I do, it's usually few and far in between, but it's about a 3-hour drive to the airport. Yeah.
So I'm sure there are people out there who have thought about traveling to Guatemala, and I know you run some group trips there, and you're kind of very adept at getting people around the country. Let's plan a trip for the Thrifty Traveler podcast listeners. So, how would you
Plan our next retreat.
Yeah,
Let's do that.
plan the team retreat? Where are you taking us? Where do you fly to? Kind of just take us through a little bit about what a trip to Guatemala looks like for Americans and Canadians.
Yeah, absolutely. So I actually have like two itineraries. So the first itinerary is if you have a week, I would fly into Guatemala City. That's the only international airport that they have. I would go to Antigua, just Uber there. It's about an hour a drive, depending on the traffic. Guatemala City traffic is horrendous. And then spend a couple of nights in Antigua. Depending on if you're a hiker, you can do Acatenango, which is the volcano that erupts. If you've seen it on TikTok, you can hike to the base camp of Acatenango and see fuego erupt, and it's incredible. You camp out overnight there. So that's again 2 or 3 days in Antigua with Acatenango, and then take a shuttle. It's about 2.5 hours to Lake Atitlan, which is where I live. Spend about 4 days there and just explore the different towns. It only takes about an hour by boat or a lancha, as they call it, to get from Panachal all the way to San Pedro. And there's tons of little towns around that you can explore: San Marcos, San Juan, San Pedro, Santa Cruz. You can go paddle boarding, kayaking, hiking. Like it's a nature lover's paradise for sure. If you have more time, I would suggest going to Tikal and Flores. So Tikal are the ruins that you if you're a Star Wars fan, they actually were included in the Star Wars movies. I actually don't know which movie, but there's a scene I think where like a ship like takes off.
Clearly, you're a Star Wars nerd.
Disney bought Star Wars, but I didn't get on that bandwagon. But I've seen the scene specifically, but there's like a scene where you can see like the ruins in Tikal, and it's a national park. So you can actually just go in, and it's just beautiful. It's like it's massive, and we did a sunset hike into it. So we got to watch the sunset from the ruins. It was really cool. And also Samuk Champay. You go to Lankeen and then you go to Samuk Champay, which are the turquoise pools. I don't know if you've seen those. But those are a little bit harder to access because it's about 10 hours or more in a shuttle. So the best way to get around Guatemala is by shuttle. Unfortunately, it just takes a while. There is a domestic airport in Flores that you can fly to, but it's a little bit pricier. So it just depends on like what your budget is. But if you have 2 weeks, definitely make the trip up there. It's absolutely gorgeous.
Yeah. So we'll talk a little bit more logistics. You said obviously shuttles are a good way to get around. What about for places to stay? Are the hotels nice? Is it more Airbnb culture? What would you recommend for people?
So, being a budget backpacker, there's a lot of hostels that you can stay at. Antigua has a ton of different ones that you can stay at. In like Atitlan, there's like Dreamboat Hostel and Free Cerveza. My friends actually own those hostels and they're amazing.
Conflict of interest, Kasey. Come on now. We're trying to run a tight ship here.
Okay, but Free Cerveza is actually one of the most famous hostels in Guatemala, and it's right on the lake, and you get paddle boards and kayaks included in your stay. So you get to do like you wake up and you're just surrounded by volcanoes, and you get to go paddle boarding. It's amazing. Airbnbs are pretty good there as well. There's this super viral TikTok hotel called Casa del Mundo on Lake Atitlan, and it's worth the hype. Like it's absolutely insane. It's so gorgeous. But book ahead of time if you want to do this. But because of its virality, it's been booked out for a while. So if you want to do that, make sure you book ahead of time. But yeah, Airbnbs are pretty easy to book as well. Yeah.
Let's bring things closer to home before we wrap up. We have established, it is a matter of fact, you are a full-blown Disney adult. For all our other would-be Disney adults, new parents trying to plan their first trip to Disney, Gunnar, listen up. This is going to be hyper relevant in probably 6-7 years for you. Disney is like synonymous with just budget busting expensive now. So what are a couple of like very actionable tips to save money on a trip to Disney coming from a tried and true backpacker who has been, I mean, a dozen, 20, 30, 40 times to Disney? Oh, wow. All right.
Keep going. Keep going.
So how can people actually save good money on a trip to Disney?
Yeah, so I'm an annual pass holder, so that's how I get to go as often as I do. I have a Florida residency, so I have the Florida resident annual pass. It's $500 a year, which is incredible. I get to go, $500. That's maybe 4 park days. But there are a few ways that you can save. I think it's priorities too. Like Disney is something that I absolutely love. So I'm willing to spend a little bit more money because it's a place that I like to go to. One big thing is food and drinks at Disney. A lot of people don't know that you can actually take your own food and drinks into the parks as long as it's not in a glass bottle. Because Disney, I think $15 to $20 per person for food, and that's not including your drinks. And so you can order, when you get to your resort or your hotel, you can order food from whatever delivery service you choose, and you can take your sandwiches and chips into the parks with you. So that's a huge money saver right there. Also, DVC rental store. So DVC is Disney's version of a timeshare. And so you can become a DVC member, which is kind of one of my ultimate goals in life. But you can also, people who have DVC, they can rent their points out and you can actually buy them for a fraction of the cost. So you can stay at some of Disney's deluxe resorts for a fraction of the cost as well. So like instead of spending $10,000 to stay at, the Boardwalk Inn, you can do that for like maybe $4,000, $5,000. So that's a big one, I think. And as someone who likes to stay at like the little bit of the nicer resorts, like that's kind of like my goal. I want to stay at like all of that because Disney has like 27 resorts. I don't know if you know that.
That's wild.
Yeah.
On the property?
On the property.
Wow.
Yes.
No,
It's something like that.
you are talking to very much the uninitiated of the Disney world.
It's funny. We were talking about this yesterday, Casey, but it's the skiing world that I'm so buried in, and the Disney world seems so similar to me. Where you save big by getting the annual pass, and then after that, you're just trying to nibble at the edges of what is otherwise an extremely expensive experience. And saving by bringing your own food and drink is something that my friends and I have done for a long time. Put a carrot in our pocket, and ski around with it because carrot can't go bad or get smushed. So just the little things, but it's funny to hear, and those are good like actionable savings advice. So thank you for that. I know I'm looking down the barrel of this Disney experience, and Kyle, you said 6 or 7 years. There's no chance I make it that long. My wife also loves Disney, so I'm sure it's gonna happen
So you've
earlier.
made it this long
And
being married.
my mom lives in Orlando, so we're
You're getting sucked into that black hole, buddy.
yeah, we are.
I think staying on Disney property is actually kind of beneficial as well because you get free transportation, and you have to pay for parking, which is like $25 a day. So even though like it might look a little bit more expensive when you're looking at the hotels, it's actually probably more cheaper. Like if you're Ubering back and forth, it's 50, 60, $70 every Uber, and if you have a family and you need a car seat, it could be more expensive. So staying on property is definitely worth looking at.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense too. When we come back, we'll continue our conversation with Kasey, but from the future. Kasey's going to update us on her trip around the world to China, Hong Kong, and more. But first, we're going to take a quick break. All right, we are back to get the latest from Kasey about her many trips, including finally ticking off the last 2 Disney parks on her list. So, Kasey, can you just remind us, how did this big trip to Asia come about?
So about 8 years ago, my aunt and I went to our first international Disney park together, and we just had made a comment about how we wanted to do all of them. It would be really cool to do all of them together. And 8 years later, here we are. We just finished our last 2 parks 2 weeks ago.
Oh, it's so cool. All right, can you tell us how you got there? Tell us about some, I guess, the logistics of the trip, and then we'll get into why it was so cool.
Yeah, so I actually flew Delta Premium Select from Pittsburgh over to Shanghai. It was $1,500, which I didn't think was a terrible for a long haul flight. It was a 14-hour flight. We flew Pittsburgh to Detroit and then Detroit to Shanghai. I will never fly economy again, long haul like that. I feel like I'm so spoiled now. I was like, oh, is it going to be worth it to spend the money if it's not like a lie flat seat? But it was so worth it. Absolutely.
I feel like everybody has a personal breaking point, and I have done 15 hours in economy to Taiwan, and I have done that exact same route in business class, and it's somewhere between 12 and 15 hours, where it doesn't matter what time of the day it's at. It's like nope, I'm not doing that anymore. I can't bring myself to do it.
That's an hour 12 when your self-talk starts getting really negative, and you decide that everything needs to change in your life. All right, Kasey. So a couple of questions about China. So I'm sure people are curious. I am definitely personally curious. What was it like? Like, how was it getting a visa to travel to China? What is the process like for somebody who might be curious about it?
Yeah, I definitely think that I've been to 35 countries, so I am an expert at planning trips and dealing with all of the logistics. But I think this China trip specifically was looming on me a lot more than most were because I've seen on social media about how it can be difficult to travel to China. And I think there's definitely more preparation that you need to do for this than most trips that you go on. But once you have those few things down, I felt really comfortable while I was in China. So you have to get a visa if you're from the US. Well, actually, there's 2 options. So you can do a 10-day transit, where if you fly in from one country, you can stay 10 days, and then you have to be flying out to a different country. So like you can't do US China to US. Like you would have to be like US China to Japan or something like that. So you can go for 10 days without a visa. But if you are staying longer than 10 days, which is what we did, we actually applied for a 10-year visa. It cost a little bit of money. It was about $500, because there's certain embassies that you have to go to depending on the state that you live in. And you have to kind of do a cost analysis. Do you want to like go to the embassy, get a hotel, get a flight, stay there for the few days to a week it takes to process the visa, or do you want to hire a service to do it for you? And we actually hired a service to do it for us. If you go yourself, I mean, it's like $120, but then you have to like pay for your hotel and your flight and your food and all of that. So that's how we chose to do it. And so now my visa is good for 10 years and I can go back as much as I want. I think 90-day stays. And I'm glad I did it that way because I will be going back to China. Absolutely.
When will you be going back to China?
Not in 2025 because I have to wait for my PTO to kick in. But I don't know. I have to do a redo. When we went, it was either 100 degrees, like I'm not kidding. It was in the high 90s with humidity, or it was raining all day. Like it wasn't just like a shower. It was literally all day rain. And even with the bad weather, it was still an incredible trip. Like hands down, one of my favorite trips I've done in a long time.
What was it like the expectation that this was going to be extraordinarily difficult and you just didn't feel that way once you got there? Or what was it about going to China that kind of scratched that itch?
Yeah, I think when you go to a new country, it's always a little bit intimidating. There's certain places I can go to now that I feel very comfortable navigating, but China, I think, was just this very large unknown, especially with having to get like around the Great Firewall with your data. And, a lot of people said, oh, there's not a lot of English there, which is true. Mainland China, they really didn't speak a lot of English. However, they did have Alipay. Alipay is your best friend when you are in China. It's an app and I think you literally do everything on this app. So you download it before you go, you put your credit card on it, and then you just use it if you go to like a convenience store, if you go to a shopping mall, if you go to a restaurant, everything you do, you use this app for. And it has a built-in translation. So like if you were to go into a restaurant, there would be a QR code on the table. You would literally scan on Alipay. There's a little barcode, like a scanner for the barcode. It shows the menu and it automatically translates it to English. You add everything into a cart and you hit pay. You pay for your meal and then your food just comes out to the table. So you don't even have to worry about the language barrier of trying to like talk to a server.
Yeah. Wow, that's really convenient. That makes it easy. Okay, can we pivot and talk about some parks? I think let's start in China. Tell us about that. So did you go to that one first, or did you go to the Hong Kong park first?
Yeah, we went to Shanghai first and then we went to Hong Kong.
Cool. All right, take us through Shanghai. How was it? What did you like about it?
So Shanghai is definitely the most technologically advanced park. It's the newest one out of all of the Disney parks in the world. So the technology there is just like mind blowing. There's a ride called Pirates of the Caribbean that we do have in Magic Kingdom in Orlando. That's like my home park. But this one is the whole time I rode it like 4 times. I was there for 2 days. And the whole time I'm just like, oh my gosh, this is incredible. Like it's so interactive and the technology, like there's this scene where you're underwater and you're like floating up like in a giant pirate ship like up through the water and like you really feel like you're like flying through the water. It's incredible. I absolutely loved it. Shanghai is also the biggest park or one of the biggest parks. We did 25,000 steps each day that we were there.
Oof, okay.
That'll walk off some $30 lunches.
Yeah.
Yes, definitely. And Shanghai, I think it's the same like as mainland China, right? Like you use Alipay even to pay at the restaurants and the souvenir shops there. And then there was definitely less foreigners in Shanghai than there were in Hong Kong. I remember like walking around and being like, oh, like there's no other foreigners here besides us in this land. So it was like it was a very different experience to Hong Kong, where Hong Kong was very international, a lot more people. It was definitely a different experience. Hong Kong's a lot smaller. They are only open from 10:30 to 8, so it's a shorter day as well. But you can get probably 4 or 5 rides done in the first hour, which is kind of unheard of if you go to Orlando because of the wait times.
That's really cool. Okay, so because you've now done every single Disney park worldwide, which is an unbelievable accomplishment and very cool and gives you some awesome perspective. But I guess I'll ask you for your official ranking, but between the two, between Shanghai and Hong Kong, which did you like better?
Personally, I think I like Shanghai better. Yeah.
That's a really cool one. Okay, can we do your ranking here? Can you maybe let's start worst to best, and let's see. I know you're gonna have to rank one of them worst, which I'm sure might
It's gonna
crush you.
hurt you inside.
Yeah.
But that's what we're here for.
Thank you so much for that. Okay, I have a list here in front of me. This is a lot of thought has been put into this, and I feel like there's also the answer could go on forever, right? But for me personally, like I am a childless millennial, so like my experiences are probably going to be different if you have kids or if you know, however you do the parks, it's going to be different. My worst park, which is still better than not being at Disney, is actually Disneyland Paris.
Okay, and you were there recently too.
I was there recently. I just think personally, they have 2 parks there. The first park, every Disney resort in the world has like a Magic Kingdom like park where you have the castle. And then some of the parks have a secondary park, or if Orlando has 4 parks and 2 water parks. Paris, I just think there's more that can be done there, and this is actually discussed quite a bit amongst the Disney adults of the world. But I think Paris is probably my least favorite. Yeah.
Okay, what's next?
Okay, this one I think is gonna upset people, but my next one is Disneyland in California, which is the OG park. But it just I'm going based off because this has been an 8-year journey. I'm going based off of like my feelings and my, how I felt when I was there. And California just it still doesn't do it for me like other parks do.
I love it. A good spicy take for in the list. All right, keep going.
Okay. So within Disneyland California, there's 2 parks. California Adventure is my favorite park, and then the Disneyland park. And then next would be Hong Kong, and then next would be Shanghai. Those both have 1 park, so there's not really a lot to choose from there. You just go to the 1 park. And then that leaves Tokyo and Orlando. And I would say, based on the reason that I chose my top 1, and it's going to be obvious here in a second, is because of the variety and just the sheer like size of the park. So I would say that Tokyo comes in second, and then Walt Disney World comes in first.
All right. Wow. You've had so much experience at these parks that I wholeheartedly trust your recommendation. But number 1, Orlando. Of course, it's your home park, as you admitted.
Our 5s or 10s of listeners in Tokyo are going to be pissed.
Yeah, and our fans in California are going to be furious too.
Yeah,
but
yeah,
I like
whatever.
it. Hey,
I don't care about them.
have a take. That's a good one.
Totally open to anyone flying me out to California and giving me their experience of Disney. So that's, I'll put that out there if you want. But to me, Orlando just does it the best. I mean, they call it Disney World for a reason. It is quite literally a world. It is the size of San Francisco.
Oh, that's awesome. I'm so glad you finished this trip and we got to talk to you again now that you have the perspective of seeing it all. Anything that we missed from your trip through Asia that you want to bring up? Anything else? Any other highlights from the trip before we let you go?
I would say 2 cool things that I did in China. A very obvious one would be the Great Wall of China. That just being there was so cool, getting to see that amount of history. Like I haven't had too many pinch me moments like that. I think as a traveler, you get a little desensitized sometimes. So that was a very, very cool moment for me. And then when I was in China, when we were in Beijing, we went to a 24-hour spa. And that was like going to like the Lotus Hotel from Percy Jackson, if anyone understands that reference. It was so cool. And my just general takeaway of China is it's incredible. Like I never felt unsafe as a woman, as a foreigner, walking alone at night, being in large crowds, because you're in China, there's going to be tons of crowds. I never once felt unsafe. I absolutely loved my experience. And I think that the media can do a very bad job of portraying countries to be certain ways. And until you go and give it a chance, you're not going to know. And I highly recommend taking a trip to China. It is a little bit of work, but it's so worth it.
Yeah, and everything that we saw on your Instagram and TikTok, Kasey, was so cool, and you made the trip look look really, really fun. And yeah, I remember when you posted from the Great Wall of China, I was like, wow, I have a coworker at the Great Wall of China right now. That's
Yeah.
pretty amazing.
Oh, good. Let's help a listener out.
Yeah, let's help a listener named Danny who wrote us. She said, "Hi, Kyle and Gunnar Olsen. A callback to my Avianca disaster from a few episodes ago. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. What are some of the most jaw-dropping, out-of-this-world places and sites you've ever been? The kind of spots that still give you goosebumps when you think about them. A lot of us Thrifty Traveler Premium members are always looking for that next wow destination, and I'd love to hear what's made your personal travel highlight reels to help spark some new ideas for future trips." Danny, awesome question. Thank you so much. Anything on the top of your minds?
Well, I'm biased. So Lake Atitlan is, I mean, I've been there 3 years and I still am like, oh my God, I can't believe I live here. It's insane. It's a giant lake with volcanoes surrounding it. You can't get much better than that. But a trip that really surprised me that I hadn't thought of beforehand was Montenegro. I went, took a tour for a week, and the hiking outside of this little medieval town with the views was insane. We did a full day northern Montenegro tour. That was absolutely insane. So I still think about Montenegro every so often.
That's been on my list for a long time.
It's
So
beautiful.
you're making the case.
What's yours, Kyle?
I'm going the South Island of New Zealand. Queenstown is the entry point for a lot of people. Don't get me wrong, Queenstown itself is drop dead gorgeous. It's a great spot to kind of make a home base and at least start a trip around the South Island, but just not just the Milford Sound, which is probably the most iconic site in the South Island of New Zealand, but the drive from Queenstown to the Milford Sound. You can also take it by plane. But making that drive a couple of years ago, I lost track of the number of times my wife and I were like, we have to stop and get out of the car to just kind of soak this in. It was the Milford Sound itself is beautiful, but I just can't stress enough how important it is to see some of that from the road in order to kind of take in that perspective as well, not just out on a ship or up in a plane, but to actually see it from the ground is really special.
Yeah, that's a really good one too. Mine, I'm staying a little closer to home. The stretch of the Rocky Mountains between Glacier National Park in the U.S., extending to Glacier National Park in Canada, and then all the way up to Lake Louise and Banff is just some of the most incredible views I've ever seen. Those are my favorite mountains in the world. They're so raw and weird, and they don't make sense. And these, you get these big rocks just carved out of nowhere. And especially as you go further north into Canada, it just gets more and more remote and beautiful. And those the colors of those lakes are just insane too. And then an honorable mention to just all of Iceland, which is really otherworldly, like kind of inexplicable. It looks like a movie set because it is a movie set in a lot of cases, but it's just that when you have the ocean just going right up to a volcano is pretty cool. And that's a place that doesn't make a lot of sense sometimes. The colors and sights and sounds there are super wild. So great question, Danny. That was fun to think about. It was hard for me to narrow it down. If you want us to answer your question, email us at podcast@thriftytraveler.com and we might feature it in next week's show. All right, Kyle.
My turn to put you on the spot, both of you.
Oh no.
You guys, we have been way too positive on this podcast. We're singing way too many places praises. So I'm going to crib one of Gunnar's on the spot questions from many weeks ago now. To put you on the spot, we'll start with you, Kasey. You've been a lot of places. You've sung the praises of Guatemala and Montenegro and Italy and everywhere in between. What's a place you don't need to go back to again? And
Great
why?
question. Wow. Okay. So a place I don't need to go back to, Belize. I want to give it another try. I do, but I don't feel like right now like I need to, or like it's a priority for me. Because when I went, maybe I was just in this like mentality of it's gonna be like a lot of other countries in Central America, but it was so overpriced for what I thought I was like the value that I was getting. And I was mainly in Kukulkan, but I don't know, I felt like there's other destinations with like similar like blue water and those types of vibes that could be way better, probably. I don't know if that's unpopular.
I think that is backed by the perspective of living in Guatemala in
Yeah.
part, and as well as the other places in Central America you've surely been to.
Yeah, Belize is just so different than the rest of Central America, though. And I don't know, the hype of it, I guess, just didn't live up to my actual experience there. And it was like US pricing. It was very expensive.
Gunnar?
Um, I already know that you dislike this take because I've given it to you before, but it's pretty much just a product of the situation I was in. But I don't really want to go back to Singapore because I was only there for about 24 hours and I couldn't afford the 24 hours that I was there. That place financially ruined me in one day. I was staying at a very nice hotel, reviewing the hotel for the website after coming off the longest flight in the world, which I also reviewed for the website. So I was definitely working hard while I was there and also coming off a crazy travel day. So I was a little delirious and my per diem did not last past 10 a.m.
You poor thing, being paid to travel the world and review these experiences. So none of our listeners are going to sympathize.
No, nobody should sympathize with me. And I've heard from you and from many others that I missed the heart of Singapore, and that if I went back and gave it a little extra time, that I would like it a lot more. But as a place to go, a connecting hub, it was amazing. That airport is ridiculous and so cool. And I've heard the city is great, but my experience there was a little delirious and a little too expensive for my taste. So if I had to cut one, it would be Singapore. Is that okay?
We'll allow it. It is truly expensive.
All right. Well, this was a fun episode. I want to thank everybody out there for listening to the Thrifty Traveler podcast. Rate us 5 stars on your podcast platform of choice, and like and subscribe to Thrifty Traveler on YouTube. Send this episode to somebody that you know who needs to go to Guatemala and who needs Kasey to take them there. If you have feedback for us, send me a note, please. podcast@thriftytraveler.com. We would love to hear from you there. Kyle, tell us about the Thrifty Traveler podcast team.
This episode was produced by your favorite Iceland-loving, Singapore-hating host, Gunnar Olsen, and it was edited by David Strutt. Our theme music is by Benjamin Tissot. See you next time, guys.
See you next time. Thanks, Kasey.
Bye. Thank you.